All right. Looks like we're good to go then. So we have Jay Kline back on the podcast for a second time. I was really looking forward to doing this because the last podcast we did, I was listening to it and there was some of the stuff on there like it really inspired me to actually do certain, like, go out and do hikes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I did a 22-mile hike, I think 2 weeks ago.
No kidding.
Yeah, and I was listening to that podcast and hearing some of the stuff you're talking about, and I was like, you know what, I gotta go and do more, like, go out and do stuff, because I feel like before that I was a little bit in not a rut, but just
a little stagnant.
Yeah, so
plus you're it's end of winter, it's still kind of nasty, and
yeah, so
it's not real inspirational to go outside when it's 30-mile-an-hour winds and cold. I mean, granted, we've had a pretty light winter, but
yeah.
Was that 22 miles you did straight through?
Straight through, yeah. It was with a hiking club, so there were other people there, and I mean, I was dying after, but it was still a experience that.
Was it an overnighter?
No, it was in one day. It was from, I think it was like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So yeah, it was
That's a pretty good clip you were moving.
Yeah, yeah. So
seriously, that's pretty fast.
Yeah, so that's definitely good to have you back on. So I guess
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, awesome. So maybe just briefly reintroduce yourself.
Yeah, Jay Kline, Jason Kline, born and raised in Northeast Pennsylvania. Done quite a bit of traveling from basically a young age, of a lot of camping, outdoor trips with my grandparents, a lot of hunting, fishing trips over the years. Spent some time in Europe, Japan, South America, even Canada and Alaska. I kind of settled here in the Lehigh Valley, Bethlehem, and I was up in this area since college, basically. I kind of bounced around a little bit, but settled here in Bethlehem, and it's a great little city, great little town where I live now, so I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, awesome. So I know the last time we talked more of kind of broadly about the stuff that you did, but this one I want to talk a little more about the hunting and fishing. So I guess we can
specifics.
Yeah, so I guess we can start with maybe a little more about your background of why you started, or what drew you to hunting and fishing.
I think it was more just a love of the outdoors. I mean, my grandfather was a hunter and fisherman. He really enjoyed it in his 20s. And then when he had a family, obviously my mom and my aunt, I think it subsided a little bit. But he had taken some deer with a bow, with a recurve bow. He had shot an antelope, and he was always a gun hunter too. And we grew up having antler heads in the house and eating wild game. And he small game hunted with some buddies here and there. And he always went deep sea fishing a lot too. And that just kind of it just inspired me to want to go. And looking up at them deer heads at 6, 7, 8 years old, maybe even younger, I remember wanting to get picked up and touch the nose of the antelope. And I specifically remember that. Yeah. I can still remember the layout of their house, where the deer heads were. And he was no trophy hunter. It was just, he was a meat hunter, basically. And even when we went camping and fishing, I mean, what we caught, we ate. It's, it's a totally different day and age now with my catch and release. But it's, my grandparents still don't fathom why I throw everything back. I'm not bragging, but a lot of places between me and my friends, we'd fish an area out.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be anything left. And, so they took me and my brother camping a lot, and we'd always just be panfish fishing. And I mean, even just run around outside. I grew up in Springtown, and we had a small creek behind our house, and I would just go down there and just want to catch everything I could. Small little chubs, small little panfish. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted that fish to eat what I was trying to put in front of it. It was an obsession I always had. And my grandparents were an integral part. I think I said this in the last podcast, of raising us and helping my mom out. And basically stepping in as a parent when my mom was busy or doing something else. And I remember just going fishing. I mean, I don't know why. I wanted to fish. And I remember catching a pretty nice bass at a young age, and we obviously took it home to eat it. And I always used to catch everything, we cut it open. I'd always look in the stomach. Well, that would let you know what they're eating.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't understand fly fishing back then. I didn't understand it in terms of what there actually was in there. I just called them bugs. And but I found a mouse inside that bass's stomach, and that was just, it blew my mind and just opened up my mind to, wow, these fish really eat other things than just worms and little spinners and stuff like that. And all that stuff is effective, but it just reiterated my thought process and my desire to want to know almost the biology of it, and probably should have been a fish biologist, really, in the grand scheme of things. But education wasn't really pushed in our family, so I didn't know what I wanted to do. Looking back, now there's fly fishing, professional fly fishing schools you can go to. I mean, I'm an idiot for not doing any of that stuff. But hey, to each his own. It's all good.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, just because obviously that's an age before the internet, so it's like you can't just look stuff up and see what does a fish eat,
Yeah,
It's
it was all hands on, and there's pictures of me 3 or 4 years old with a fillet knife in my hands. And, I mean, it was different, there again, not knocking parents for, kids are coddled. If I cut myself, my grandfather was like, don't push the knife at yourself. It's that simple. You always fillet away from yourself, and I learned a lot from him. I surpassed him, but it's all good. It's like that's the whole point, I guess, of raising kids in a family. You want them to do better than that first generation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that firsthand experience is sort of something that now that there's a lot less of it, I think it can get lost on the newer generations, like especially my generation, because I'm Gen Z.
Yeah,
and I think I was sort of the last real generation to experience growing up without the internet and that kind of stuff and learning things firsthand.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get like a computer with real internet access until maybe like fifth grade. And I mean, I guess we did have it when I was younger, but it wasn't a central part of, our house or our lives. So
I didn't have a TV till I was 18.
Yeah.
But my mom thought nothing of it. Of me walking out of the house, I kind of fibbed a little bit and told her I was allowed to hunt without an adult. I would sneak out and hunt rabbits and squirrels, and we'd eat it. Like, we lived on that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived in Springtown, and I used to just disappear for hours, if not like a full day, and just go down to Silver Creek and just fish, and come back. Back then, the limit was 8. And I mean, if I had my limit of fish, that was a good day, and I felt good about it, and they were stocked fish, there for the taking, and I followed the rules, and I remember, I lived in front of a Silver Creek Athletic Association. There's all the baseball fields. I played plenty of sports and played baseball and stuff down there, but I remember a couple of kids that I knew, they had older sisters. And, I didn't know any better. I'm parading around with all these fish thinking, oh man, these girls will like me. And I got 5 or 6 fish on my stringer. And I'm parading around and they're all like grossed out. Like, how can these girls not appreciate? I just caught these 5 fish and there's adults down there not catching anything. It's a demented mind of a little boy,
Yeah, I mean, it's especially those experiences when you're younger, because growing up where I grew up, like we have a lot of open space, and I could just kind of go out and play in the
in the fields
and in the woods.
And
I think with people growing up, and other friends that I have that grew up near me, but they didn't have that experience, and I feel like that you kind of lose a little bit of that sort of exploring the outdoors and
for sure
being one-on-one with nature versus, when you're just kind of out there doing your own thing, and you don't have like an agenda in your head of like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go for maybe like I'm going to go for a hike, or I'm going to go for this specific purpose, where I feel like people who didn't grow up with that, they can have that sort of mindset of just like, well, I'm going to go here and I'm going to see this, and then I'm going to
follow a map. We're going to make sure I don't get lost. The trail's fully marked. Yeah, half of my fields that I hunted and played in are developments now. Actually, more than half, I would say. I would say probably 90%. I mean, if I had to throw a number on it, I can drive back through where I grew up at, and all them areas that I played in are gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
The houses are still there, but there's houses and driveways, and it's us humans have taken over.
Oh yeah, and especially growing up here, where we're doing the podcast, is where my family grew up, mm-hmm. and when my grandfather was here in 70 years ago, all of this was open. He said he could hunt this entire mountain here. So, and just now how it's kind of, there's all these housing developments. And
in front of your house and right behind my house.
Yeah,
so it's all multi-million-dollar homes.
Absolutely.
What do they start at? 2 million, 1.9 million they start at?
Yeah. So it's like, it just depends on your background or where you're growing up, but it's having those experiences when you're younger and being able to, go outside and
play.
Yeah.
Go out and play. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess was after where Alaska was your first sort of.
So we did a lot of the Midwest stuff.
Okay.
Prior to Alaska. We did Alaska, I want to say probably 10, 12 years ago now. And I've been back one time since. And it was, so my grandfather's always dreamed of Alaska. He watched the movie Into the Wilderness by Dick Proenneke. It's kind of like it's one of the first documentaries, I believe it was in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah, I saw a little bit.
He filmed himself. Yeah. He built his own cabin. And I guess his son had since published it and stuff. But my grandfather saw that back in the day. And that just, he was just driven to get to Alaska. So he would drive his little Volkswagen truck to Alaska over the summers and just live out of the back of his truck. And just go up there and just disappear for a month at a time.
Yeah.
And then my grandmother would fly into Anchorage and he'd come drive in and pick her up. And he'd drive around for 2 more weeks and then he'd drop her back off at the airport and he'd spend maybe another week or so out there and then he'd drive back. And I think he did that about 6 or 7 times.
Yeah, wow.
So I think that's where I genetically get that passion to be outside and,
right.
to not need a set game plan, just to go. Just go. And you can have all the plans in the world and things are going to change.
Yeah.
You're going to get detoured no matter what. It's how you handle the detours that makes it, makes or breaks the trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they got obsessed with Alaska. My grandmother was kind of on board with it. And then when he officially retired, they moved up there. They spent 1 year or a year and a half or something like that in Prince Edward Island first, running an Airbnb. That's a different story. I've been up there too. But so they were always helping out a pretty wealthy gentleman from the Quakertown area and building a few camps for him. And the guy basically took advantage of my grandparents' kindness, but they were having fun doing it. And it worked out for us because me and myself, my buddy Pat, and his younger brother Keith had basically free access to a lodge and a bunch of individual cabins. So we kind of planned a trip to go up there, and then another good friend of mine and his now wife got wind of it, which are all good friends. So they came up for, we were there for about 2 weeks, I think it was, and they were there for the full time also. So there was 5 of us who kind of all went up there, and it's just a big, humbling state, man. It is. Everything is bigger. Every single thing is bigger. You can't explain it till you go there and see it.
Oh yeah.
And if you drive an hour to somewhere, that's like, I'm right down the road. An hour to them is like right down the road.
Yeah.
And but you can drive for 10, 12 hours and you're still not a quarter of the way halfway across the state.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was there for almost 2 weeks, I guess, and I saw a minuscule, puny part of it. And it was basically just the southeast part, which it was amazing, but it wasn't a big area. And we basically got there and we got to that little camp my grandparents had set up, and it was early June, and so it was like the peak of the equinox, I guess, the summer equinox.
Yeah.
Equinox, I don't know what it is. And it was almost light for 24 hours a day.
Oh yeah, wow.
It was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, and we were awake. We got there and we were all fired up, and we went fishing right away, and we started getting into fish. We fired up a smoker day one, we put some trout on it, and then we got into some salmon. We were awake for like 48 hours straight, if not even a little more.
Oh, wow.
Because we were just all excited. In the daylight, you just didn't get tired. And then we crashed.
Yeah.
And then we all just spread out. We all just crashed for 10 or 12 hours. I think we almost repeated that same schedule for a couple of days till we kind of leveled out and we were just exhausted.
Yeah, that's really...
It was amazing, man. And just to have that, we didn't catch Northern Lights, obviously, but that's one thing I want to see up there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But the summertime, it's crazy. You can read a newspaper basically 24 hours a day outside. That's how bright it is.
Yeah, I know. I heard it's like land of the midnight sun, where it's just sunshine almost all the time. And I know it's hard. I think for someone who's going there, it can definitely be hard to adjust to that. And they have the flip side too, where they have 24 hours of darkness.
Yeah,
some of them
a lot more dark, but everyone else is awake too.
Yeah,
so we were pretty far from any towns or anything. We had civilization around us, but we didn't have any. We only flew into Anchorage and we left Anchorage right away, but we weren't in any big cities. So we were there to fish too. So we did a float trip on the Gulf Canyon River. We floated and fished in the Copper River. And we would just pull the car over and just fish all these just random lakes, and they're just loaded with fish.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and yeah, take my grandfather's little canoe down and just canoe around, and the fish they're hungry and they just eat. And it's like, it makes you a good fisherman.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many fish to catch. And it's like you're like successful at least every third or fourth cast. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think Alaska, too, is really one of the last places in the United States where you can there's still so much wilderness out there that's unexplored.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a lot of places that like Southwest, it's not as expansive as it used to be, but Alaska, I don't think much has changed. And
we can't change it.
Yeah.
I mean, besides the mining and besides, getting heavy equipment in there,
right.
You can't get through some of them areas. It's just too rugged.
Absolutely.
And it's just, the mountains are too big, too steep, and the valleys are too deep. And, the blowdowns, and I mean, they have natural disasters there too. I mean, they have their forest fires and they have their earthquakes.
Mm-hmm.
My grandparents were actually in a major flood zone, and they had to get helicoptered off their property.
Oh, wow.
Because it was a stream that was
Right.
flooding. It was just crazy. And their house was actually spared. I think it was 2 of their neighbors lost their houses.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was, a small stream that, 10, 12 foot wide normally. And
Yeah.
It was 40, 50, 60 feet across and just raging and the big thing with that is it's picking up debris.
Right.
And sending it down the river. And, it's basically a torpedo coming at you.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost like a tsunami just of
Yeah.
the way it builds up.
Yeah.
And it's not like maybe around here or somewhere civilized where it's like you just get in your car and you go on the highway and you leave. It's like, no, it's a dirt road or even if it's not dirt, just a really primitive road.
They lived on a dirt road.
Yeah, so it's like you can't just, hop in your car and drive 20 miles away. It's like if the creek is flooding, you either have to kind of know ahead of time and plan to evacuate.
I will say they knew. And my grandfather just was like, we'll be okay. And they were, but it wasn't a smart move. I'm not saying he should do it again. And he even said he wouldn't do the same thing again.
Yeah.
He underestimated it.
Absolutely. And I think it's good that, things worked out, but
yeah.
sometimes people, when the power of nature and how destructive it can be if you're not prepared for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they weren't prepared.
No.
Yeah. It's that stream if it would have kept coming up, or I forget what kind of saved it, whether it was a berm or just the way the creek kind of swung around. But I mean, it was feet from their house, and I think 2 or 3 of the neighbors on the same road all lost their homes and their vehicles.
Wow. Yeah, that's it's really powerful.
Intense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know at least the power of flooding around here is there's a local city of Easton. They'll experience flooding, and I mean, when you go there, when it's not flooded, you can see the river's pretty low. And when it does flood, I know my aunt has a store there that's pretty far up on a hill. And she said, the water was pretty much up to her front door there.
On 611.
Yeah,
okay.
So it was, I mean, just the power of flooding and water and how damaging it can be.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it just kind of puts it into perspective that, that stuff is dangerous.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg in Alaska, too. I mean, the animals will kill you.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's armed up there, too.
Yeah.
Like everybody's packing heat. And they don't have the problems we have down here. I mean, obviously there's problems everywhere, but it's like you're basically carrying guns and protection a lot of times from
wildlife.
The moose and the bears, and I think moose kill more people than bears up there too.
Yeah, I know people underestimate how aggressive they are.
And how large they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we'll touch on a moose story with me a little later on.
Yeah.
It's happened.
Yeah, so we can move to Idaho then. Some of your trips out there?
Yeah. So we do a couple different trips out there. I've elk hunted it 2 times. I'll do it yourself elk hunts up in northern panhandle of Idaho. And then every year, except for this year due to my ankle surgery, I want to say it's been 7 years since I've been going to do a trout fishing trip in the middle of late February typically.
Okay.
And that's on the Snake River. And which is a pretty big river. Kind of, I forget right where it starts, but it comes down through Wyoming,
right?
And then we're kind of on the Idaho side, and it goes all the way down. It goes all through Idaho too. But we fish basically a tailwater below the Palisades Dam, and there's like 5 or 6 of us, if not 7 or 8 of us sometimes, we all chip in, rent a house, and it's that's all still do-it-yourself trip, but it's not a roughing the trip. I mean, the hardest part is dealing with the elements.
Yeah.
I mean, we are there in late February, and it is we're either dealing with at least 2 to 6 feet of snow, depending, and you're dealing with bitter cold temps, but you're not dealing with anybody else fishing.
Right.
So it's neat because there's just no one else out there.
Yeah.
And when you get to go to them river valleys in the middle of winter, and there's just no one there except for you and the eagles and the waterfowl and the moose and the deer and the river itself. And the river's lower too, that they're not not letting as much water out. They're stockpiling the water for the summertime. The dam, I guess, releases water, and that fills up tributaries for a lot of the farmers.
Okay.
So they pump water out in the summers. I mean, you get down in the big giant river bottoms and the river valleys, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true Idaho potatoes. So I've seen them.
Yeah.
There's huge barns full of all the chitting potatoes.
Yeah.
And and I don't really know how they plant them all, but they have all those big wheels, and they pump all the water out of the Snake River to come through the canals.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's in the summer. So I mean, we're there. We go there purposely with the intent of not dealing with other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's an affordable trip. We're getting the house at a discount because no one else is there.
Right.
The house we stay at is probably a good mile off the main road, and the homeowners, they have big heavy equipment. They're ranchers. I think it's at least a 4,000 acre farm.
Okay.
4,000 acre ranch we stay on.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, we can't really explore it because it's 2 to 6 feet of snow on the ground. But yeah, so we just we all stay there, and then we sneak out every day. We eat a big hearty breakfast. Everybody sneaks out, and we just distribute down along the river. You don't really start fishing until about 11 to 1, just depending on the temps. Your lines freeze, your fingers are frozen. Getting down to the water is usually a fight. You're post holing, trumping through 4 feet of snow. And sometimes there's other fishermen who've been there, and we can get on their paths or get on a game trail or something. That kind of helps. But once you get into the water with it being lower, you can everybody just spreads out. So each vehicle has 3 to 4 guys, and we pick each other up, and everybody kind of communicates, and you bump into each other a little bit, but it's very, you're definitely alone out there.
Right.
Which is, we're all cool with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You bump into someone, you eat lunch with them, and then you kind of just spread out again. I mean, there's enough water to really spread people out.
Yeah.
It's a neat place. My buddy Scott was downriver of us the one day, and he's a big dude, 6'2", 6'3", in shape, and he saw these mountain lion tracks, and not that he was following them, but he was just fishing his way down,
right?
And he smelled something, and he just knew he knew it was a mountain lion, even though he never smelled a mountain lion before. Mm-hmm. And he looked up, and he kept going a little bit further, I guess, and he looked up into this log jam, which where the river had risen at one point in the fall, jammed up a bunch of logs and created like a lair. And he had a feeling that cat was in there. And sure enough, that cat comes out of this thickness, goes out onto a log, and he just starts freaking out. And I guess he was like 15, 20 yards away.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he's a big guy, like I said, and he said that cat dwarfed him.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it didn't charge him or anything, but he kind of got big, and he was like making noise at it, and it scared him pretty good. So
yeah,
since
absolutely.
then, he now carries a 10mm pistol on his chest.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine an experience like that, just kind of shaking you a little, shaking you up. Yeah.
I mean, we came back. We all met back at the house then, obviously for for the day of fishing. And then he went right back to the truck then too, just to kind of calm down.
Yeah.
He was ready to jump in the water if it was coming at him.
Yeah.
Like, he kind of had a game plan, but the game plan could have went awry real quick.
Yeah, I mean, a game plan with a wild animal is like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a game plan. Well, so that, most wild animals too, and we'll talk about this here in a second, they don't want to encounter us.
Right.
If they can have an escape route, they'll take it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that cat did have an escape route. And the next story I'll tell here, with me and a moose, that moose didn't have the escape route. It had to go at me. It had to go where I was to escape. But So yeah, Scott had that pretty cool encounter, and again carries a pistol. And going back to that, I think it was that same afternoon or the next day, he went and spoke to 2 ranchers right in that area, and they had lost some lambs. There was a lot of sheep and beef cattle down there in that area, and they had lost some lambs to that cat.
Wow, yeah.
And he told both of them, and they thanked him up and down for letting them know kind of where it was. I mean, we're not looking to get rid of the things, but when they come down out of the mountains in the winter, they could have grabbed a kid.
Absolutely.
There's actually where we park our trucks is a school bus turnaround and drop off.
Wow.
And it was probably 150 yards, 200 yards from where we park our trucks where that encounter happened. So it's
so you gotta, I mean, make sure that things are safe for the people who are living there.
Yeah.
Because I know
just letting them know was not safe enough for us,
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
and I don't think anyone out hunting it.
No,
you know, but just to, listen, nothing is back there,
Yeah.
And you might lose more lambs, hopefully no kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I know there's people who go around, they have it's kind of like cattle herding, but they chase the mountain lions. I forget what TV show that's on, but they have the one guy who sends out the dogs and they'll run after the mountain lions and chase them back up the hill. But it's like, I mean, obviously you're not looking to harm it.
Yeah.
But it's like if it's coexisting with people, you just want to make sure everybody is safe. And
I think the ranchers too, they don't want to lose a lamb and they don't want to lose cats, but if they lose, they obviously account for losing some. I mean, even if I was a rancher out there, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I don't know for a fact, but I don't think I'd go out hunting one if they killed 1 or 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
They got to eat too. They were here first, Yeah. If it gets a taste for human blood, it's one thing. I mean, depending if the person's cool or not. I mean, hey, if it's taking out the right people, maybe let it go,
Yeah, and I mean, they have to make a living too. It's their livelihood, and that's how they support themselves. So they have to, if it's too much or too bad of a situation, then they have to do what they have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about it a little bit. Is there more to that moose encounter story?
So I was on I think it was the same year. So I'm not good with times and dates. I may have said this before, especially when you do a couple things, So I was fishing the Snake River, and I had to kind of go up over this berm and get down to a dry creek bed to get out to this spot in the river. And I started seeing some moose tracks, and I started seeing some nibblings in all the dogwoods, with some fresh browse sign and, some fresh moose scat. And I come up over the berm, and I head down this dry creek bed, and I smelled her. And I moose most wild animals have a distinct smell.
Absolutely.
Scott said it smelled like, cat pee. Like it was distinct odor. And I couldn't say that if I ever smelled a moose before this, but I smelled a moose. And I knew she was around, or knew he or she was around, so I just started making more noise, like, "Hey, moose, I'm in here, I'm just fishing, just coming through." Literally, like you wouldn't want to spook a bear. You wear bells in your shoes in Alaska to not.
Yeah.
You don't want to startle that game. You don't want them to think you're a predator trying to get them.
Right.
Then they're going to go into defense mode. So I'm just kind of talking loudly, and I didn't see anything other than just a sign. And I kind of went up over the dry creek bed a little bit to get down to the river. I had no other choice but to go that way. And sure enough, all of a sudden I see a calf, and I froze. And I'm like, "Oh, it's okay, girl. It's okay." And I knew the mother was around somewhere. And I mean, it's you think with a white background and thick trees, you'd see a 7-foot tall, dark brown giant object. I mean, I saw her, but she was camouflaged.
Yeah.
So also, I saw her moving off to my right, which was only about 15, 20 feet away. I mean, it's thick, small saplings. That's where they're feeding on. So I take one step back, and I'm talking loudly, "I'm not going to hurt you or your baby." And I had to keep going past her to get out. I didn't want to get cornered where I was at.
Right.
So she did not want me there. She starts walking towards me, and I took my phone out, and I snapped a couple pictures. I may have sent them to you.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was about 4 feet away, and she was already, her ears went back at about 6 feet, and I already started moving. I'm like, "I'm out of here." And I didn't, I'm trying to run in 18 to 20 inches of snow or whatever it was, and I just take off running. And I saw her come up over the little hill rise, the little hillside there, and she just came right at me. She didn't chase me, but she charged me.
Right.
And I already take off running, so she basically cut my track, back behind me, and I felt the air pressure change. And I probably ran 15 to 20 yards maybe. And I knew she wasn't chasing me, like I said. So I stopped and also and after that, like then your heart started racing. Oh my gosh. And I kind of scratched my head, like my hat was missing and my sunglasses. I'm like, oh no. And I looked back and I waited till she and the baby moved off because she was corralling her baby then to get out of there. They didn't want to stay there either. So I moved a little further away. I started looking in the back of my tracks and my hat was stepped on by her. And my glasses were basically laying in her paw print or her hoof print that she left.
Yeah, wow.
So she was close.
Yeah, definitely.
And, I mean, you can tell by them pictures. I mean, that was about 4 feet.
Yeah.
Is how I had the advantage of the little berm.
Right.
You know, I was still in that dry creek bed. I had that advantage going for me. And I mean, it probably wasn't the smartest thing. I'm happy I did it.
Yeah.
You know, and at least got some photographic evidence of. But that was I think that was the second year after Scott's, because Scott's story took the cake the 1 year, and then that was the second time we got charged by something. Well,
yeah, wow.
Scott didn't get charged, but it was a pretty good encounter.
Yeah, and I think those pictures they don't even do like for how close you're saying it was. I think they don't even do it justice for.
Ears back, like she, you know, like any animal when they're kind of worked up, they would get their ears back,
right?
Kind of ready for battle, you know, ready to go at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, and I mean that definitely shows you just how powerful those animals are, and I think people, especially with moose, they think they're more like deer and they're docile, and if you go near them, they'll just jump and run away. But no, they're very territorial.
They don't have to.
Yeah,
you know, they know that they're the kind of top dog. I mean, even if a wolf went at that thing,
yeah,
a pack of wolves is different, but a single wolf or a single coyote, they're not going at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know there's some. I've seen another show I was watching that there's some that just have the back of them was all scraped up by like a wolf, and you know they have bite marks out of them, and they just keep on going. Like yeah, they're very powerful animals. I just stress I don't think people understand how dangerous some of them are.
How fast they can cover ground.
Yeah,
I mean their legs are 4 foot tall.
Absolutely.
You know, we'd stand there and look at them. We're only going to come to their brisket.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and that's what they're made for. You know, the big wide hooves are not sinking deep into the snow. They're wonderful swimmers.
Yeah, absolutely.
We see them in the river a lot too. So when rivers are low, they go out there and they eat the algae in the middle of winter. I mean, sure, in the summer they're eating weeds, but they'll swim completely underwater and to feed. They'll snorkel. And they can hold their breath. I mean, I've never seen that. I never saw that, but I mean, they're a very adaptable creature, especially for the West.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is people think of them as they're plant eaters, so they're not going to come after. They're not coming after you to eat you. They're coming after you to just do whatever they can to defend. Their calf. Yeah. So it's good that there's that hopefully people are becoming more aware of that kind of stuff. That it doesn't just have to be a bear or a mountain lion. Like any wildlife can really do some damage if you don't respect it and give it space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, moose too. The bull moose. That's more of a when they're rutting in the breeding season, and they don't have the best eyesight, but their nose doesn't lie. But they know they're the biggest and the baddest.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they'll come at you, and they got especially a big bull moose with a 6 foot frame of antlers. They're bigger. Just the antlers are bigger than you and I, and that thing could just probably grab both at the same time and throw us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Without having an issue, and that'd be a territorial thing. That would even be a protecting of the baby.
Definitely. Definitely.
I think every animal kind of you ever get close to a bird's nest.
Yeah.
And having the mama bird dive bombing you, it's like every animal will protect its young.
Yeah, I know sometimes when I'm taking trash out, there'll be deer around around my house, and they're getting a little more territorial. I mean, they'll just they used to just bolt, but now a lot of them just stand there. They stamp their hoof a little bit, so it's some of them are. It doesn't really matter what wildlife it is. They're there to defend themselves, and they can get aggressive if you mess with them too much.
Yeah.
So I guess now we can maybe jump to your Montana trip, staying in the primitive cabin.
Yeah. Actually, we also did a lot of hunting in Idaho too.
Oh, we can talk about that more.
Yeah. So we see the mountain lion there that time too. That was pretty awesome. So we've done 2 different do-it-yourself hunts in the northern panhandle of Idaho. And we have a good friend of ours who I was introduced to through some other good friends who lives out there. So our buddy Emmett, two brothers, Joey and Jesse, I know, and my one buddy Pat, who I've done a lot of my trips with. We've gone out there. We fly out there. Emmett would usually pick us up from the airport, and he's got a camper. So we'd all kind of rendezvous at his place, get our gear together, hook up to his camper. And the one year we hooked up to the camper and took it out and found a spot. And in another year after that, him and his wife and their two daughters took the camper and left it. So you can leave your campers out there. I think it's for 1 month at a time, just in the national forest.
Right.
So we always had a base camp. And then one of Emmett's good friends, Stu, was very kind and basically gave us a brand new truck to use with a trailer and a UTV.
Yeah.
So we had a 4-wheeler, UTV, and a camper as a base camp.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it was pretty awesome. And then Stu let us take all his stuff up there, and then his wife drove him up there, kind of halfway through her hunt, and he hunted with us for 5 days. I mean, people, it's all who you know, man. I mean,
Right.
And I never knew Stu, but he was a buddy of Emmett's and good, solid guy. He liked us, and we liked him, and it was just cool to have that experience with them guys. But I mean, to have that base camp set up, really kind of, we can branch out. So we would have this base camp, and we'd spike out from there. So we either take a truck up, to the top of the mountain, and we'd hunt our way all the way down to the base camp, or vice versa. And we'd have a buggy to leave at halfway, and we'd all split up. So being 5 or 6 guys, you can't hunt together.
Right.
So we either hunt in groups of 2 or groups of 3, and then we'd try to find a spot where we'd rendezvous to set up a camp for the night. And if you and I are in one big bowl fishing or hunting,
mm-hmm.
we all plan to meet at the top far ridge at night, and we'd find each other. We'd just pick a spot on the map, and we're all we're all good outdoorsmen. We got our way, figured out where we're at, and that's really fun because you can you get kind of the best of both worlds. You kind of can go sleep in a camper / bed and have a nice big campfire and be able to cook and make a racket for a night, and then for 2 or 3 nights you can go out and really really rough it, live out of the backpack and hunt elk.
Yeah, and, that's awesome.
It was awesome. So our very first year out there, we all spiked out, and we didn't get a wink of sleep. There were so many elk around us, so many bull elk, just bugling and fighting and running, and this is night. So I mean, we didn't sleep.
Yeah,
wow. And we're all talking to each other through our little bivy sacks and our little tents, like, this is crazy, like it's gonna be incredible tomorrow. And so we all get up, basically got up at 5 in the morning. It died down a little bit. I think everyone fell asleep maybe from like 3 to 5. Everyone gets up right away. We're all jacked up. We all get our stuff together, and first thing in the morning is we're like waiting for that sun to come up. We saw some stuff moving. We saw a big giant bull cruise. This is going to be incredible. So we all split up, and my buddy Pat and I went our way, and Joey, Jesse, and Emmett went the other way. And so Pat and I, we had a real good encounter that day, 2 encounters that day. We didn't get anything, so we hiked and hunted our way back to the camp then. We probably got in 6 or 7 at night, an hour or 2 after dark. And then, we're waiting for them guys. Man, they're still not back yet. Pat's like, we should go out there. They got something. We should go out and look for them. Like, what are we going to do? He's like, I know. We don't know where to go. And so we end up, doing little whiskey shots and crash out for a little while. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, we kind of hear this racket coming down the road. And sure enough, it's those guys pulling in. Like, we meet Pat run up. Joey shot a big 5x5 bull.
Oh, wow.
First morning at 10 yards with his bow. And so those guys butchered it all up. And so they butchered it all up, and then they just kind of hiked to the closest logging road and flagged down another local hunter, and he gave them a ride and to their vehicle. And they didn't get back till like 2 o'clock in the morning. So the following day, we all just kind of partied and we all took turns helping butcher up the elk. And then Joe had left that camp because he's got a family in Montana,
mm-hmm.
and he took the rack and hide to Montana to get that dealt with and then package up some of the meat. And I think we kept both loins in camp and a couple other big chunks of meat. I mean, he still had a couple 100 pounds of meat. At least 100 pounds of meat he took home, if not more. And then we probably ate 40 pounds of meat, 'cause every day we're just eating elk then, It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude.
And where we set up camp too, we're always next to a nice branch of the Coeur d'Alene River.
Mm-hmm.
Not to blow up any spots, but Little Coeur d'Alene River, I should say. And so we were able to keep everything cold. So we bagged up our stuff in our meat bags and just kind of kept under rocks so the smell wouldn't come out. So it's like always refrigerated.
Right, yeah.
And plus that little stream's full of wild trout. It's like, you come into camp, you can just go fly fishing, whack a couple of nice wild cutthroat trout. Like it's an awesome place.
Yeah, it sounds
it's so
really
much
great.
fun. And with the good friends too. I mean, we're probably going to do it again. My ankle's obviously kind of been hurting me a little bit, but I think maybe next year we're going to do one more trip out there before we start hunting somewhere else, because it's a neat area.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a real neat area.
Yeah, and it sounds like a really great place for, when you have people that are interested in the same thing and you put up with the harsh February conditions, it's like, it builds bonds, it builds memories.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's just...
So the elk trip is done in September.
Okay.
But the fishing trip...
Right.
But both sides of it. You build up relationships and bonds.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's still... we didn't experience any snow, but you could get snow up there. And we're in the Rockies.
Right, yeah.
It could have snowed. It could have got nasty. We had a couple cold mornings. But
Yeah, I mean, September seems like a good time to go.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, you're down to one long sleeve shirt through the day. I mean, it's rugged country, though.
Absolutely.
It is steep mountains, and it's thick. And I think the success rate, I think it's 6%. Which it's not a very high area.
No, yeah.
So I mean, even when you have encounters and when you find sign and when you're in the area where the elk are, I mean, that's a success.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like we're all past just the killing.
Yeah.
It's the hunt and the pursuit to us that's where obviously, a kill's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously respecting and treating the kill properly is great, but I can't wait to just go. I mean, even just seeing Emmett again, like it's great. His camper's a good time, and some shenanigans that go on in camp too that are pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, just it's the whole.
The camaraderie.
And the journey is better than the destination. Where it's even if you get nothing, you still come back with all the great stories and the great feelings that you had from the experience.
Yeah.
And I think if people are looking to do that kind of stuff, or just go out and hiking or whatever, that kind of stuff, and they look at all the negatives, it's like, oh, well, things might go bad. I might if I go hunting, I might not get anything, but it's like,
I don't think you almost have to expect that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I don't think, but you'll never leave with nothing for any experience like that.
So when a lot of people think too that you just go out there and you go hunting. We're actually hiking all day.
Yeah.
We're hiking and we're hunting all day. A lot of my hikes, just Vancouver and even Colorado and stuff, I go on these hikes, but I'll have a fishing rod in the back. So my destination is to get to an alpine lake or get to a small stream somewhere and fish it, and even in Idaho, I gave up one full day hunting just because the fishing was so good and I wanted to just go fish.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, that's cool, man. I think my ankle was hurting me pretty bad. So I just took the buggy and I spent the full day driving on logging roads and smoke a little grass and just go catch some fish. And I had a blast.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful, wonderful time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just with the hunting, it's not just sitting in a tree stand and waiting for stuff to come.
The deer hunting kind of is, but the elk hunts, you're so interactive with the nature side of it. And so we even had a couple slow days and we were having, we kind of had a squirrel hunting competition and we were shooting these pine squirrels. Well, we came back to camp with, I didn't even get any. I think I missed 2. And I'm like, for $22 an arrow, I'm not shooting anymore. But a couple of our buddies got 3 or 4 and we cleaned them up. I soaked them in milk and then we had a squirrel fry the next night for supper, and it was spectacular.
Yeah.
We're all eating fried squirrle.
Yeah. How many people can say they've done that? I don't know that many.
At least four other ones that I know.
Yeah, I mean those are the experiences that you get doing that kind of stuff, and just going out from your house and pursuing something that sort of adventure.
Yeah, I mean I did the same thing in Iowa. I shot two of them big giant fox squirrels. Took them back to my my little shack I was staying in for 3 or 4 weeks, and I made fried squirrel again. I've been eating squirrel since I'm a kid.
Right.
You know, I'm not saying I'm going to Philly and snagging squirrels and eating them, but I've been eating. It doesn't bother me. I've been eating squirrel. I like it actually. I don't mind the flavor at all.
Yeah.
And now that I'm, I got some major culinary experience behind me, I can make a pretty damn good squirrel. I mean, anything fried is pretty good.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I've had, people eat calamari and that's octopus. I mean, people, anything fried.
Squid.
Yeah. Squid, yeah.
Dude, we catch a lot of squid up in Cape Cod.
Right.
We got in a bunch of squid last year, and I actually kept the boat out in some pretty snotty weather just so my buddy Al could catch his squid. He caught a big giant squid, and we came back with calamari for almost 2 days straight.
Oh, wow.
And it's fantastic. I mean,
yeah,
fresh
definitely.
Calamari, oh man.
Especially when it's that fresh caught.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I know I've had it in a restaurant in California like 10 years ago, or my parents, and they had friends out
Fresh
there.
from the docks.
I'm sure it was probably pretty fresh,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, it was a higher end restaurant too, because the guy, he's a chef too, so
Okay.
yeah, that was.
Well, they probably got it from the fish market.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like, yeah, I mean, stuff like that, fried calamari, fried squirrel. It's like the people, people can expand their palate a little bit and enjoy that kind of
And
stuff.
half the time, and our neighbor, and I'll say ours because he's your neighbor too.
Yeah.
John over here, he was saying how he doesn't like venison. And I'm like, we'll see. And I made some venison chili, and I don't make it a heavy venison flavor. And I do it right. I build the flavors, and I gave him a bunch of venison chili with some homemade bread I made, and he was like, Jay, I like venison. I was wrong. I was like, well, you might not like it. You're not going to like a deer chop.
Yeah.
But I take care of the meat, and I clean it up so well. I'm not leaving a lot of silver skin on. There's no fat involved. It's a very cleaned up piece of meat. Even when I grind all my meat, I treat it with such respect, and it's cleaned up so well. I get rid of as much of the gamey flavor as I can. And that deer, if we got out back here, that deer, I think it hung for almost 2 weeks. It was like a dry aged venison.
Yeah.
I mean, dry aged beef it's the same thing, that red meat.
Yeah, absolutely.
English people actually hang waterfowl and pheasants for almost a month.
Oh, wow.
And just to let everything break down. I've never done that.
Yeah.
But and people freeze whole birds.
Yeah.
Just to let them age. And then when they're ready to clean them, they take the feathers off, they defrost them, clean them up, and then they serve them that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think I like that point you're saying too of just, you kind of go from the hunting to the butchering of the animal and then to eating. I think that's sometimes with people with hunting, they kind of, if you're going out just to kill an animal, I think that's a little, I'm not totally for that, but it's like, I think it gives you a greater appreciation for what's on your plate when you have seen, from the animal being alive, and then you have to take care of it, and then you have to butcher it, and then you make it into something. It's like you get a full appreciation for like the circle of life and how one living thing has to give itself for you to be able to continue going on.
I respect the animal's life I'm taking.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't always.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a killer.
Right.
And I'm getting softer and softer. But I still want the big buck. I still want the big bull elk. I still want a big moose on my list. But I want to eat all them animals too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's I think I put my time in enough to. And like I said, I do my own butchering, and even when we take fish, we do all these fishing trips. I'm 99.9% catch and release. I only take what we can eat that night. Like, when we get into a bunch of fish, I could fill up a cooler. When I got 4 guys in the boat, I could I could kill 8 fish.
Yeah, absolutely.
We kill 1 fish, and for all of us, and then we eat fresh fish that night, and that's it. And then we got them squid carry over good the next day, and when you're the squid thing, it's like you try to quick fill a bucket because you're on to them quickly and they disappear just as fast. Most saltwater fish are like that, but it's a treat to get the squid,
right?
Especially because we were there when we go to Cape Cod. We were probably about a month behind a real squid migration, and like right about now, the squid fishing is getting really good. By the time we get there in June, it's really subsided. So when you get into them up there in June, it's like, wow, cool,
Yeah.
But I'm not piggish.
Right.
I used to be.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's especially when people are younger, and especially before, you can stuff. You have the internet to like kind of
Yeah,
see.
and I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
You know, like I had mentors, and even growing up, even more maturing. You know, I still feel I matured later in life. Just this is how I was. Like, it took me longer for things to click.
Right.
But it's not. Yeah, it's about the journey.
Absolutely.
And the destination's always great.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know, you still you need that destination to drive the journey.
Right.
But yeah, there's a whole lot more to it. Yeah, a whole lot more to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking a little bit about fishing. So why don't we just jump to maybe the night fishing in Maine that you did?
Oh yeah. So I've night fished a lot. So in my 20s and early 30s, mid 30s even late 30s. So striped bass, that's kind of what we're targeting at night, and catfish, really eat and become more just active at nighttime, pending tides. So I mean, it was no secret that it was always night fishing was the best. You know, whether you're fishing Jersey, Carolina, anywhere, the striped bass bite is always better at night. And most bigger, mature fish do their feeding at night. They know they've been around long enough to know when they expose themselves. You know, big old trout up in the upper Delaware, you know, he watched Jimmy get eaten by that eagle kid last time he came down, was eaten during daylight. You know, I don't know if their brains process all that, but they don't become 20-inch plus big fish by feeding all day, you know, being frivolous.
Right.
So almost all big fish feed at night. And so that's no secret. But so I started getting into surf casting in my 20s, and started in Jersey. I started working my way up the coast. My one good buddy John really got me more into striper fishing. Always did it, but he was the driving force. He's got the connections up in Maine, so he was always the talker of the group. So he was like, I heard about this spot, and we started going to some of these spots that he hear about, and we were doing well fishing.
Yeah. So just surf casting, is that, or just explain that a little bit?
So it's basically fishing from a beach.
Okay.
A beach, river mouth, from shoreline.
Right.
You know, not so much freshwater. It's more of a saltwater game.
Mm-hmm.
Although most big freshwater fish do eat at night also. Yeah. So it's like it carries over to all different species and all different, you know, salt and freshwater. But so the surf casting is more like bigger, heavier rods. You know, sometimes you're throwing out there as far as you can. Majority of the time, the fish are kind of right. You know, you don't have to cast as far as people think you do. But I've gone to Montauk quite a bit, which is kind of a renowned surf casting fishery. Just because it's got a lot of structure that brings the fish in, and the fish feed and move around at night.
Okay.
I used to swim the rocks, and in the middle of the night. And I always had a fear of sharks, but I've kind of gotten over that. But I've gotten, so anyway, our buddy John, his family had a little property up in Maine, and he used to do a lot of fly fishing up there. You catch some nice fish, and so we started going up there with him a couple of times, and then we'd fly fish, and we'd struggle, and we were all just kind of newer into the fly fishing game, and so we'd start taking our plug-in setups, our surf cast and spin gear and stuff like that. We start getting more and more fish, and it just kind of turned into an obsession, and I was going up every year, once or twice, and then I met one of his friends up there, and I was able to park my little pop-up camper up there. So I mean, I'm jumping ahead a couple of years to a night or a week basically, where a big pot of giant fish jumped in or moved in, and we were just into big 40-inch, 25 to 35 pound fish, almost every other cast.
Oh wow!
For like 5 nights straight, and I mean, it was just. And it still is really good. I mean, it's a certain area that, you know, when the tides are right and the moon's right, and I timed everything with the tide and the moon, and I called my buddy Big Bill, and I'm like, dude, you got to get up here. He got right in his car, and he drove 7 hours. And then for the next 3 to 4 days, man, we were just crushing big fish. And I think I sent you a couple of pictures, and that rod that I sent you a picture of, that's a 10-foot fishing rod.
Oh wow!
I mean, you saw the head on that thing. I mean, that was one of our biggest fish.
Oh wow! And
it was like 2 a.m, you know, outgoing tide.
Yeah.
And the fish were just stacked up. I mean, we could do no wrong. I mean, it almost made us. We felt like we were the best fishermen in the world, but we were just there. And just, you know, and that's what it's about too, is putting it putting the odds in your favor.
Absolutely.
But being there. I mean, when you're the only ones there at 2 a.m., that's,
Yeah.
the guy who shows up at even 6 a.m., he missed it.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the tide dropped out. You'll still bump and pick a couple of fish up. And I'm still fine with catching some, I don't only just target big giant fish. I mean, obviously you want to. But it's harder for me to fish at night anymore just because it's like, it exhausts you.
Absolutely.
You do that for a couple of days straight, you're just shot.
Yeah.
I mean, and you've got to sleep all day and like, and I'm not a night owl. I mean, I can get my adrenaline going when it comes to fishing and stuff, but I'm not a night owl. Like I like my 8 hours sleep, and I'll get up early.
Right.
But so I like to go to bed early at that point then too. But yeah, that main thing, it's like that all over the East Coast, but that was just a spot that we had, and we still have it actually, and there's just no one there.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I'm sure with the internet, I don't post or show or. I want people to experience what I experienced, but I don't want the world to know about it.
Absolutely.
Like I don't mind certain people. I'll share certain information. I'll share my knowledge and I help somebody. But it took me 47 years to try to figure all this out. And I still don't have it all figured out.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't need to toot my own horn and be like, look what I got. And when I'm talking to a fisherman, they'll break out their phone and show, nice work, man. That's a nice fish. Good for you, And like, well, how'd you do? Yeah, I did okay, whether I caught a giant or 10 giants or didn't catch any giants, I usually I don't need to embellish it. And
right.
I'd rather be low key. Me and my buddy Big Bill were down in Jersey, and this is just an example. We got into some big fish, and there were a lot of guys around, and everybody's fishing, and no one's catching anything. And I switched over to a different lure, and I'm like, I just think this will work. And bang, whack a good fish. Bang, whack a good fish. I mean, I whacked 5 or 6 in a row. Big Bill come and dude, Jay, what do you use? I said, I give him one, and our buddy Carl. I mean, both of them guys are 10 times the fishermen I am.
Right.
I just happened to clip on the right lure, but and they had them in their bag too. And then when they we just started whacking fish, and we each got a keeper, and we caught numerous keepers. But we all walk out, and like, we got to take these, we got to take our plugs off our line. So we put on these big pencil poppers, which is a big top water plug that just, and the fish weren't on the top. They, and we walk out, and all these guys are putting their headlamps on us. That's usually these guys, these guys are fishing. They're just shining their lights in the water, like you don't do any of that stuff. You lay low. You don't want them fish you to know you're there. People argue all day. The fish don't care about the light. Fish care about the light. They live there.
Absolutely.
Why would a random light be shining over them? Green, red, clear, white, whatever. It's just not natural.
Yeah.
So we clip on these big giant lures like this, and we were using small lures, something tiny.
Right.
The fish were just keyed on that smaller bait. And all these guys are putting their heads like, whoa, you guys, what are they hitting on? We're like, big pencil poppers. Everybody behind us starts like bringing all their lines in, putting these big pencil poppers. Everyone's like, making a big racket. I mean, kind of wrong, but we just had to laugh and walk down the beach just giggling. I mean, there's 6, 7, 8 guys and all just making big splashes and probably sinking all the fish, Maybe they call it, I don't know, but like, and they're like, where are you? We're like, we're right behind these guys. And like, go figure it out. But all them guys, they were just sitting on their chairs, soaking bait or, just not, I'm driven, man. If I'm not catching something, even at a young age, if I couldn't get that little tiny minnow to bite, I'm going to keep trying to get that, even if it's small. I'm
yeah, absolutely.
Get that thing, I want to trick it, it's like it's on session.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I kind of get that same sort of feeling too with a lot of things. It's just like, if I can't do something, you just have to, like, you can't just do it once and give up. It's like, no, you try it from this way. I'll try doing it from, this idea or change it a little bit and try this.
And even with this podcast, you can adapt and change, and it's always going to be different too with whoever guest you're speaking with.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I learned that actually in college from my I had a painting class, and we had to do 25 paintings in a semester, and it was like,
that's a lot.
Yeah, so you fail so many times trying to do it, that eventually you kind of work out all the bugs. And I'm not like a.
Did it have to be something specific?
It was outdoor like landscape paintings, but so like I'm not like the greatest painter ever, but it was. I think the lesson was just of learning. Keep doing something over and over again. You learn more from your failures, and like you were saying with the
I think the professor's
fishing
idea on that was it's going to motivate you.
Absolutely.
And it's like you might not, and then in reality, you probably did 112 paintings that semester, and you only handed in the 25 you needed to because maybe you were frustrated. I mean, I could be wrong, but the idea is like you make a nice painting of the outdoors, you don't like it.
Yeah.
I gotta start over.
Yeah.
And then on your third one, all right, I'll save this one and submit this one. So really, you just did two practice, or I guess the idea maybe behind the professor's thought process was these kids, young adults, will practice, hopefully, and it's probably weeding some people out.
Absolutely,
too.
Yeah, and I think that definitely ties in with what you're saying about, if you're doing fishing or hunting or any of that stuff, it's like you learn more from your failures, and when you keep doing, if you are trying to look for the shortcut.
I could do a whole podcast on how many times I screwed up. Actually, I could do more podcasts on my screw ups.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people.
I could have all my successes.
Yeah, I think people, when it comes to that kind of stuff, they don't really understand how powerful failing at that stuff is.
For me, I find humor in it.
Yeah.
And I'm not ashamed.
Absolutely.
So, I know some people who I respect and like in my life, but they're so like, I'll make a mistake, and like if I make a mistake, I admit it. I should show it, and not that they wouldn't admit it. But I'll publicly say I'm an idiot. I look what I did. I'll show someone my mistake. If you believe I did this, or this is what I thought, like, and I do it at home sometimes. It's like I'll tell Diana how you know something stupid I did today. Like she would never even thought to ask me if I did something stupid. But I don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially and not about my failures, but what I've had to find through my business, through work, through life in general. If I can shave off a learning curve for somebody, I'm not always going to shave off a hunting and fishing learning curve.
Right.
But I'll point you in the right direction and help you figure it out.
Yeah.
But if I can shave off a business and help someone succeed, or help someone make a wise investment, or help someone make a wise work decision, I'd love to share that because I wish I would have had that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I might not have more money or whatever, but I might have more money. I don't know, or I would have gotten 2 or 3 more jobs, which would accrue to more money.
Right.
I don't have a problem sharing my failures.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when it comes to, I'm not just going to go down there, even if I'm taking you fishing, I'm not, we'll go down there and I'll show you what to do.
Yeah.
But I'm not just going to dump. It probably wouldn't work out anyway. I dumped 47 years of knowledge on somebody because they're not going to be able to put it all into play.
You need context to like even the failures of if you kept trying something and it didn't work. It's like, well, if you don't know what the basics of what you're doing, how are you going to know this advanced sort of failure to like a specific part of it? It's like I think that's kind of how I got to after when you reframing failure is sort of just like it's just one way of doing something that didn't work, and now you can just move on to something else rather than not admitting it, and then you just keep doing the same thing wrong over and over again, and you're going to be disappointed.
Hopefully no one gets hurt. Hopefully you don't lose a lot of money doing it.
Absolutely. And I think that's with like the fishing and stuff. It's like you're not, unless it's a really safety thing. It's like if you don't get a fish, it's not going to be the end of like no. In
fact, again, when I don't catch something, it's like, oh man, I'm going back tomorrow. I know the fish are there.
Absolutely.
I'm not good enough to make them eat.
Yeah.
My buddy Big Bill is. Like, he can make them eat. Yeah. Like, I don't know how he does it, but he can do it.
Yeah. So just before, why don't we talk about the primitive cabin in Montana?
Yeah. So we, this was probably 10 years ago now, too. No, maybe 8. I don't know. I'm terrible again. We were talking about doing a Montana hunting trip, a mule deer trip. I never shot a mule deer with a rifle. So we reached out to my grandfather and our family friend George, his friend who he met through the union. This guy, he sold a family farm down in outside of Philly somewhere, Phoenixville. So it's a big high money area. He got quite a big chunk of change to a big developers, sold off that farm, kept a small little piece for himself and his son, and bought 4,000 to 7,000 acres. I'm not, a lot of property out in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had some other hunters hunting it, leasing it from him and stuff. So he's always had a little bit of residual income. And he has on the backside of the property, about 1.5 miles off the road. And again, road is a very liberal term out in Montana. I mean, a dirt road. We were probably about an hour and 20 minutes from the town of Broadus, southeastern Montana. And the town of Broadus had a restaurant, a gas station, a weird place to get your hair cut, and that's about it. So about 1.5 mile back on the Russ's property, he had an old cabin. So he basically restored that cabin. Not restored it, he restored it historically. It was probably built in the early 1900s.
Right.
So it had like a potbelly stove in it, a wash basin. So there was a well up there that we were able to get water from. It had no running water, no electric. Had like a dining room, living room area. He put some furniture in it. It wasn't like wooden furniture.
Right.
But he redid it historically. So I forget what kind of roof was on it or whatever. I should know that, being a roofer and all, but I don't. But he had like decent windows in it, but big old wooden door, a bunk room,
right,
outhouse, no running water. Like I said, he put a bigger, better stove in it now, just because that old potbelly one wasn't safe.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically, all four of us, myself, my friend Dave, my grandfather, and George, drove out there, and it was the week before opening day of the rifle season. And so Russ took us around. He had an old Suburban that was his ranch truck, and he let us use that. And we had George's truck and a four-wheeler, and had basically free range of 4,000 to 6,000 acres. And I was just in heaven. I mean, just the accommodations, like it's just so neat being in a rustic cabin. And I love the smell of smoke, and that you come in from a day of hunting and your face gets all red from the wood stove heat, and so that was our cooking source, our heat source. And again, we had water, but we brought water jugs in to do dishes and stuff like that. So, but I mean, so we were out there probably 2 days before the actual hunting season, and to do some scouting and checking stuff out. And we were able to small game hunt too.
Mm-hmm.
So the day before the season, I think I'd found a couple of spots to hunt, and then we snuck out and did some rabbit hunting, and shot a couple of rabbits and some sage grouse, and then cooked them up for dinner. I shot a buck the next day, so we basically ate venison. We ate my whole deer in 2 weeks.
Wow.
I came home with no meat. I mean, a little bit, but everyone else tagged out. So everyone else chipped in, and I got to take some meat home. But and after I tagged out, I would small game hunt periodically through the day, and we didn't. I don't think we went to town one time. I think we maybe went to town one time for some vegetables, but we just ate wild game every day up there. It was awesome. My grandfather getting a really nice mule deer. George got a real nice 5x5, and Dave got a nice big 4x4 mule deer. And none of them were even within earshot of each other.
Right.
We were all just spread out around the ranch. So I would position my grandfather in spots, and I would kind of go out and scout more and then come back and get him. And so we were kind of hopscotching around, and it was the same year. So we were out there in September, mid-September. Earlier in that spring, he had triple bypass surgery.
Wow. Yeah.
So he was out there just trucking around, and he ended up shooting a nice big, I think 4x4 or 5x5 mule deer at like 85 yards with his old school gun that I've always dreamed of having too, which I kind of have now, 270. It's pretty awesome. And it was just a heck of an experience. I mean, it's southeastern Montana. It's just the Powder River Valley. So, I mean, there's all kinds of games. We had antelope coming through. We didn't have antelope tags. We only had deer tags. We had antelope coming through the valleys. We didn't see any elk, but there was a lot of elk sign on the property. Right. And then we went down to another ranch. That guy said we could drive across his ranch, and there was elk all over. I'm talking hundreds. Yeah, wow. Hundreds. Like it almost like seemed surreal.
Yeah, absolutely.
We didn't have tags for them. We weren't hunting them. We just went down to see him.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, you want to see elk?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're just go back to that field." And he's right. There was 300-400 elk back there.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. Just sort of those areas where, and even if you're not hunting them, you can still be amazed by seeing them.
We just sat in the trucks with our binoculars and watching them feed, and it was building up to the rut, which is the breeding season.
Right.
So off to the corner, you'd hear one bugling, the sounds they make, and they'd lock up antlers and be fighting and chasing other bulls off, and they always keep their cows close, and they're trying to corral their harem of cows around, and it's and I'm no seasoned elk hunter. I like it, and still never shot one.
Yeah.
I mean that is a goal I'd like to achieve.
Yeah.
The journey getting there is fun too, but I'd like to achieve that goal. And mooses.
Absolutely.
Still want to be successful at it, but again, that whole everything that went with it. I mean, and just being with my that was kind of like the last time my grandmother's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, so she kind of had that prior to that trip.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of the last trip I was able to ever do with my grandfather. He's still alive, but it's not doable now.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, I've really respected that trip, and same with our friend George. Mm-hmm. He has since had real bad Parkinson's. Okay. And he was a good hunter and outdoorsman too. So he had that trip, even though it wasn't as long with all my buddies, with my friend Dave. I mean, it meant a lot to me. Yeah. Especially living like we got to live, and I'm happy they all got to experience that too. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was right in my grandfather's alley. Yeah. Living in their little cabin, and same with George and Dave too. Like it was a lot of fun, and it's just just having a good time. So then also too, one of George's good friends lives out in not Billings, a town or a city, I think about 2.5-3 hours away. He drove out to stay with us for a couple of days too. So that was really neat to have, and plus it made me feel a lot younger. I was the youngest one out of everybody, so that made me feel good. I was all full of gumption and all the energy, and it was a lot of work on me though too. Yeah. I did all the cooking and all the butchering, and we all kind of butchered, but I was kind of running the show. Yeah, absolutely. And taking care of 2 old guys. My buddy Dave helped a lot too. He took George a lot because George's Parkinson's was kicking in pretty good then at that point. And so Dave really took George under his wing. But that's an experience. And again, Montana's one of them states, and it's just, I want to keep going back, but I mean, I see just a small little portion of it. Yeah, absolutely. I never even got to see the Rockies out there. We were in the foothills, Mm-hmm. I like the country. It was very accessible. It's way easier than the mountains of Idaho we go to, that's for sure. Oh, wow. It's a little more rolling. Yeah. Had some rock outcroppings and stuff, but it's more rolling. And we're kind of getting down into that Powder River Valley. Mm-hmm. And the river valleys, anywhere you go, hold game. Yeah. Everything needs water. Absolutely. And, there's usually crops down there. There's much better browse, much better tree life that, everything eats and resides in. Creates much better habitat. Definitely, yeah. Much better habitat. Yeah. Yeah, so let's, we're running over an hour or so. I'm okay. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can get into some, I guess, advice for people who want to get into the hunting and fishing. To jump right into it or get into it, I feel it's tough. I'm just being honest. Fishing would be much easier than hunting. I mean, hunting, you need a spot, mm-hmm. And there's public land. There definitely is, but there's a lot of morons on public land. Oh, yeah. A lot of morons on public waterways. I mean, I utilize them also, but I'm very respectful and very aware to other hunters, to my surroundings. Most guys aren't like that. Right. Most guys, I shouldn't say most, a lot of guys, they're either weekend warriors, which is fine, as long as you're doing it legally and safely, it's okay. Mm-hmm. But in a lot of situations, I see that boat launches all the time. Guys can't even pack their boats up. Or they can't pack a trailer. Like, why? And just the idiocy with driving a boat. Like, there are rules. There's rules out there. Like, and no one, a lot of people don't follow them, and they're just how they don't understand tides and don't understand how dangerous that water is. Definitely. Like the currents and everything about it. You take not only your life but other people's lives in your hands when you're out on them boats. Even when you're out there with a gun. I mean,
Right.
you know, you're still carrying a deadly weapon. I, not that I've done anything stupid with a gun, but I had a gun go off. That's because I was 12, and I squeezed the trigger. The gun didn't go off. I squeezed the trigger
Right.
because I was all excited, and my finger was by the trigger, and I thought the safety was on, and it gun was pointing the same direction. But that was the last time I ever did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I mean, it could have ended terribly. I could have had my gun pointed towards my grandfather that day. I mean, to get into fishing, it's, you know, you just got to go get a license. I mean, it's nice to go with people who have had some experience. I mean, if you're a brand new at it, I mean, there's so much. And just in terms of learning knots and the proper gear. You know, I take it for granted when I can just look at a piece of water and already reaching into my pack and knowing exactly what I'm going to put on, why I'm putting it on, and where I'm even going to put that lure or presentation, whatever. My brain's already computed all that in a matter of seconds.
Right.
But I mean, to get into it, I think you just got to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and the hunting thing is a little harder to do. You got to take a hunter safety course. You got to get competent with a weapon. And this is all stuff that you know, I've been doing for so long that it's second nature to me. But I think it's very important to take a hunter safety course, to even take a gun safety course, to know how to operate your weapon, your bow, whatever, and be very, very competent with it. I mean, if you're competent with your weapon, whether it's a fishing rod's a weapon or your bow or your gun, you're going to be elevated to another level again too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just become a woodsman. Learn your trees, learn your shrubs. I mean, it's a dying art. You know, people watch YouTube, how to go fish this spot. But and YouTube can be good and all. I mean, I catch myself watching stuff too. I watch more educational stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It frustrates me a little bit because they're giving up kind of secrets, not secret stuff. It's taken me a lifetime to learn.
Absolutely.
They're divulging that stuff for extra likes. And I don't know how much money they're making or whatever. If they're making a living on it, I don't really know. I mean, it's legal. It's here to stay. So you can't. I don't try to get worked up about it. I just do what I can to go catch my own fish or find my own spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you gotta become a woodsman or an outdoorsman. You know, learn your insects. Learn how to read water. And there again, tying yourself in with someone else. You know, a mentor basically, whether they're older, younger. I mean, my buddy. I know numerous guys who are technically younger than me. I'll take all the advice they can give me.
Yeah.
You know, and they'll take advice from me too. It's not, it's not a competition with me. You know, I want to be successful. I want to have fun out there. It's not I don't need to puff my chest up. I got a whole phone full of fish and deer porn. and then the people I surround myself with, they got a bunch too. Like, we know what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's not a guaranteed thing every time. But and the internet can be a good place to pick up some basics. And
Definitely.
Like you said before, I think you said something about how to do something. You can learn the basics from that. I still actually check out some stuff on knots. I get refreshed on a couple knots, or I'll hear about a new knot. You can watch it on YouTube or a big screen. Like, okay, that makes some sense. And I mean, I do pick things up from the computer.
Definitely.
But you can't. You can only pick up so much before you got to go do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I
know. I feel that too. Just you have to, even with more than just hiking or more with fishing and hunting, it's that you kind of have to. You can only use the computer so much and go so far and get so much information before you actually have to do it firsthand. Because if you're just watching it online, it's just a casual sort of you're just a viewer. You're not. You have to go out and actually be a participant if you want it to be something that you want to do with your life.
Yeah, and it's all how far you want to take it. I mean, I take it to a whole other extreme, and I'm not the only one. I mean, the people I hang out with, we all take it to that same extreme. Hence why we get along well. But with my ankle situation the way it is, I'm really into watching videos on how to tie flies.
Right.
I'm a total novice fly tyer. Well, for the last 2 months, I'm obsessed with tying flies due to my ankle issue. I can't walk right now, so I'm down in my basement. But what stinks for me, I don't even know if these things actually swim right, look right, because I can't go out there and test them.
Yeah.
I actually just have, since our last podcast, I have given a bunch of flies away to people to go test for me. I know what I'm looking at though too. I have the experience to know what all right, that looks good. It should work,
Yeah.
But does it? I don't really know. I mean, I'm very excited to try to catch something on something I tied. I've never caught a fish on a lure or a fly that I tied.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just started really tying.
Mm-hmm.
I've had device, I've had some material, but in the last 2 months, I mean, I'm devoting 8 to 12 hours a day to tying flies. And I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't walked in almost 2.5 months right now.
Right.
And people are like, "Oh, aren't you bored?" I'm like, no, I'm liking this.
Yeah, I think that's part of the, I guess, inspirational stuff. It's just, if you didn't like it, you wouldn't sit down there for 8, 12 hours to learn that kind of stuff.
Not 8, 12 hours one shot. Once my ankle starts swelling up, I got to come up and elevate it, and I head back down. Kind of that pain goes away. But I mean, we live in an area too that's very heavily pressured,
right,
with other fishermen, other hunters, and and Pennsylvania is one of the largest states of one of the most populated states of hunters.
Yeah.
I think Michigan's right there with us, Minnesota, and if you can be successful in the Northeast, hunting and fishing, I mean, even doing a lot of stuff, just there's competition here. There's a lot of people. It's a populated area. I feel you can go anywhere in the world and do well at whatever you're doing. We're an hour from New York City, an hour from Philadelphia. The Lehigh Valley is huge.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're successful in almost anything you do, you can go anywhere in the world, I feel, and be successful. This is a tough area. It creates a tough, fast-paced person here, just kind of the way I see it,
Yeah, absolutely.
I go to places where there's, I get on the Monocacy or I go down the Lehigh or whatever, and, there's 22 fish per mile. And I catch 1 or 2.
Yeah.
You go out to Colorado where there's 3,000 fish per mile. You go out to Idaho where there's 4,000 or 5,000 fish per mile.
Yeah.
The sky's the limit.
Absolutely.
I go down to Patagonia where there's, I don't know how many, and I'm catching 30, 40 fish a day.
Yeah, definitely.
But my skill set has improved, and it's like proving grounds.
Absolutely.
Around here, and every state probably has that. I can say that because we live here. This is our proving grounds.
Definitely. Yeah. So just learning the basics, and
you gotta learn the basics. Just like with cooking, you learn the basics, and you can build on that. And
absolutely.
That's where even with my fly tying, I'm learning the basics so I can kind of. I'm not creating any new flies. I'm not looking at name stuff. It's like. Yeah, I need to keep learning the basics for another 5 years. Like, this is something for me to look forward to of getting older. Most people don't want to get older. In another 10 years, it'll be sucked being 57, but I'll be a damn good fly tyer. Hopefully by the time I'm 57.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah.
When I first started fly fishing, it's like, I'm just going to grind this out. Hopefully when I get old, I'll be a good fly fisherman. Well, I've kind of become a pretty good fly fisherman now. Now it's another stage of the game,
Yeah, definitely.
And be with the right people, and I think I said in the last podcast, you got to find the right people you can travel with.
Definitely.
And who you're compatible with.
Definitely. Yeah.
You can't force relationships. It's like you can't just be like, oh, this guy's a good fisherman, but he's a jerk.
Yeah.
I don't like him, but I'm going to go anyway with him. You're not going to glean what you can from him because I don't think you can anyway.
Yeah, no. Yeah, probably not.
I don't know. Maybe you could. I don't know. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't. There's guys out there way better than I am. I mean, I feel I can always improve.
Definitely.
I couldn't probably hang out with some of them.
Absolutely.
I won't mention any. I love the guy to death, but I can't fish with him and be with him for more than a couple days in a row.
Yeah.
It just gets on my nerves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so just learning or being with the right people and learning how to do stuff from an early age, or just. You're always learning. You always have to be learning.
And you got to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
You got to start. It's like everything I've done in my life, I had to do for the first time at one point. Everything you've done in your life.
Absolutely.
You had to do your very first podcast.
Yep.
You had to buy your very first set of equipment.
Yeah.
You got to drive your car for the very first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, and you just build on that.
Definitely. Yeah.